Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
My name is Roosevelt, and at 32, I've built a tech company worth millions from nothing but determination and countless sleepless nights. Growing up poor in small-town Minnesota taught me to value every dollar, which is why I never hesitated to support my family financially when success came. I thought I was fulfilling my duty as a son, nephew, and cousin until that Sunday afternoon when I accidentally saw their group chat while fixing Mom's phone. The messages I never should have seen shattered everything I believed about family loyalty. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you've ever discovered a painful truth about someone you loved. I grew up watching my mother Donna work 3 jobs just to keep our lights on. Our small 2-bedroom apartment in Lakeville, Minnesota, always smelled like the diner where she waited tables during the day. At night, she'd clean office buildings downtown, often taking me along because childcare wasn't an option. I'd sit quietly in empty conference rooms, doing homework under fluorescent lights until well past midnight. My father walked out when I was 7, leaving nothing behind but a stack of unpaid bills and the fading echo of broken promises. I still remember standing in our driveway, watching his truck disappear around the corner, my mother's muffled sobs coming from behind the screen door. That was the last time I saw him. Uncle Frank, my mother's older brother, stepped into the void my father left. A mechanic with perpetually oil-stained hands and strong opinions, he became the man of our extended family by default. Early on, his presence felt like a blessing. He fixed our car when it broke down, brought groceries when times were especially tight, and taught me practical skills in his garage. But his help always came with strings attached. Family sticks together, he'd remind us, which I later learned meant family owes each other, indefinitely. Aunt Patricia, Uncle Frank's wife, presented herself as supportive, but her comparisons between me and her children, my cousins Kyle and Jessica, were thinly veiled competitions. Kyle got another detention, "But I suppose not everyone can be as focused as you, Roosevelt," she'd say, or Jessica needs new cheerleading equipment. It's so expensive raising children with actual social lives. The barbs were subtle but constant. From a young age, computers fascinated me. While other kids played sports or video games, I spent hours in the school library learning to code on their outdated machines. By 14, I was fixing neighbors' computers for $20 a repair, saving every cent in a coffee can hidden under my mattress. I dreamed of attending college for computer science, creating something innovative that could change lives, and yes, make enough money so my mom wouldn't have to scrub floors anymore. High school meant working after classes at the local grocery store, then delivering pizzas until midnight. I'd catch a few hours of sleep before waking at 5 to help Mom with her newspaper route. Somehow, between work shifts, I maintained straight A's and developed my first primitive apps on a refurbished laptop purchased with 6 months of savings. When the acceptance letter from State University arrived with a partial scholarship, I felt like I was finally breaking free. My mother's reaction surprised me. "College? That's 4 years away from family when we need you here." Uncle Frank was more direct. "Fancy education won't teach you what real work is. Your mother needs your support, not your ambitions." Nevertheless, I enrolled, determined to build something better. 3 semesters in, Mom developed pneumonia that turned serious. With no one else willing to provide daily care, I reluctantly dropped out to move home. While she recovered over several months, I continued teaching myself advanced programming, turning our garage into a makeshift office where I started a small computer repair business. That's where I met Harold, an elderly retired software engineer who brought in his broken laptop. After I fixed it, he noticed the code on my screen and started asking questions. Harold became the mentor I desperately needed, spending evenings teaching me industry standards and pushing me beyond self-taught limitations. "You've got something special, kid," he'd say, while my family dismissed my computer hobby as a waste of time. At 24, I developed an inventory management app that caught the attention of several small businesses. Working 18-hour days, I improved it based on user feedback until larger companies started inquiring. When a regional distributor offered to pay 6 figures for customized implementation, my life changed overnight. Despite the success, moving 40 miles away to Minneapolis felt like betrayal to my family. "So, you're too good for us now?" Uncle Frank asked when I told them. Mom just looked disappointed, reminding me that family should stay close. I compromised by finding an apartment just 20 minutes from them, commuting daily to the city. Marcus, a client who recognized my app's potential, proposed a partnership to expand its capabilities into a comprehensive business management platform. We founded Streamline Solutions together, securing seed funding that allowed us to hire our first employees. 3 years of relentless work later, our company valuation hit 8 figures. When a major tech corporation offered $50 million to acquire our platform, I couldn't believe it. The struggling kid from Lakeville had somehow made it. After taxes and splitting with Marcus and our investors, I walked away with $15 million more money than anyone in my family had ever imagined. Instead of buying a mansion or sports car, my first major purchase was a modest 4-bedroom house for my mother in a safe neighborhood. I paid off Uncle Frank's mortgage and the mounting credit card debt he and Aunt Patricia had accumulated. I created college funds for Kyle and Jessica, despite them being in their 20s and showing little academic interest. I believed family lifted each other up. Soon I established monthly allowances for my mother, uncle, and aunt, $3,000 each, deposited automatically. I covered their cell phone plans, car insurance, property taxes, and medical expenses. When Kyle wanted to start a business selling custom motorcycles, I provided $30,000 in startup capital. When Jessica claimed interest in becoming a makeup artist, I financed her cosmetic certification and initial inventory. As months passed, the requests grew more frequent and substantial. Mom's house needed new appliances, then complete renovation. Uncle Frank's garage required commercial equipment upgrades. Aunt Patricia developed a sudden interest in luxury cruises for her health. Kyle's business hemorrhaged money with nothing to show for it. Jessica abandoned makeup artistry for interior design, then photography, then jewelry, making each career change, requiring new investment. Whenever I hesitated or asked questions about how previous funds were spent, I faced immediate emotional backlash. "After all we've done for you," Mom would say, eyes welling with tears. "Family supports family unconditionally," Uncle Frank would remind me sternly. Their disapproval felt crushing, reactivating the abandoned child within me who desperately sought family approval. So I kept giving, watching my bank account drain month after month. I still had millions, but the principle bothered me increasingly. The family I supported showed little interest in my life beyond what I could provide financially. They rarely asked about my well-being, new projects, or relationships. At family gatherings, they'd change the subject when I talked about my work, yet privately request more money immediately afterward. I began feeling less like a loved family member and more like an ATM with legs. Still, I continued supporting them because that's what good sons and nephews do, or so I believed. Sunday dinners at Mom's house had become a monthly tradition I both anticipated and dreaded. I'd arrive with dessert from her favorite bakery, prepared to spend 3 hours being subtly criticized while simultaneously fielding requests for financial assistance. That particular Sunday seemed no different as I parked my sensible sedan. I never bought anything flashy to avoid family commentary. In her driveway, Mom greeted me with her usual kiss on the cheek. The house smelled like pot roast, my favorite meal growing up, now served strategically whenever someone planned to ask for something substantial. Uncle Frank and Aunt Patricia were already seated in the living room, while Kyle played on his phone and Jessica texted rapidly on hers. "Roosevelt! Just the man we wanted to see," Uncle Frank called out, his booming voice carrying that particular tone I'd come to recognize as his preamble to asking for money. I nodded, setting the bakery box on the kitchen counter and helping Mom with final dinner preparations. "Honey, before we eat, could you look at my phone?" Mom asked, pulling out the latest iPhone I'd purchased for her last Christmas. "It keeps freezing, and I can't figure out those settings you showed me." "Sure, Mom." I took the device, glad for the momentary distraction from whatever financial request awaited me at dinner. As I navigated through her settings, checking for software updates and closing background applications, a notification banner slid down from the top of the screen. "Frank, Everyone remember the plan tonight. Roosevelt needs to step up with the business investment. The message preview disappeared quickly, but the name of the group chat caught my eye. Family Matters, no Roosevelt. A cold weight settled in my stomach. I hadn't known they had a group chat, let alone one specifically excluding me. Mom had stepped away to check the oven, giving me a moment alone with her phone. I knew I shouldn't look. Invading someone's privacy went against my personal ethics. But seeing my name mentioned in conjunction with what sounded like a coordinated plan overrode my better judgment. With a quick tap, I opened the chat. The initial messages were everyday family communications, scheduling conflicts, shared memes, complaints about work. Then I saw my name and began scrolling through recent history. Frank, remember, we need at least $50,000 for the business opportunity. Make it sound like a sure thing. Patricia, do you think he's getting suspicious? He asked questions about the cruise last time. Donna, Mom, he'll come around. He always does. Just remind him how we struggled when he was young. Frank, he thinks he's better than us just because he's successful, getting too big for his britches. Donna, he owes us everything. Without us, he'd be nothing. Kyle, lol, does he actually believe I'm building motorcycles? That money bought my trip to Vegas and the new gaming setup. Jessica, just tell him Grandma needs medical treatments again. Works every time. He never calls her to verify. My hands trembled as I scrolled further back, finding hundreds of messages spanning months. They detailed every manipulation, every lie, every fake emergency designed to extract money from me. The medical treatments for Grandma, who I now discovered was perfectly healthy but coached to sound ill on the phone. The education funds for my cousins diverted to vacations in Cancun and designer clothing. The business supplies for Uncle Frank sold online for cash. There were screenshots of my bank transfers with celebratory messages, mocking comments about my boring clothes and predictable generosity. Plans to ask for more each month because he won't notice anyway. Photos of items I'd paid for being resold through online marketplaces. The final exchange had occurred just that morning. Frank, tonight we present the business investment plan. Roosevelt will think he's getting shares in a real company, but we'll create some paperwork for show. Once the money's transferred, we split it 4 ways. Donna, what if he wants to be involved or see the business? Frank, we'll say it's still in development. After a few months, we'll tell him it failed. He's so busy he barely follows up anyway. Patricia, what are we using the money for? I want a kitchen remodel. Kyle, I need a down payment on that lake house. Jessica wants a new car. Frank, we can each use our share however we want. Just stick to the plan tonight. A notification popped up dinner was ready. I quickly closed the chat, finished the basic phone maintenance, and handed the device back to my mother with a forced smile. My heart hammered against my ribs as I took my seat at the dining table. Throughout dinner, I watched them with new eyes. Uncle Frank discussing the promising business opportunity that needed investment. Mom mentioning Grandma's declining health and increasing medical bills. Aunt Patricia commenting on their neighbor's kitchen renovation in a not-so-subtle hint. My cousins exchanging knowing glances whenever the conversation turned to money. I barely spoke, pushing food around my plate while nodding at appropriate intervals. They mistook my silence for consideration, rather than the profound shock and betrayal consuming me. I excused myself early, claiming a work emergency, unable to bear another minute of their performance. Think about the investment opportunity, Uncle Frank called after me. Family helping family is what life's all about. I drove home in a daze, the words from the group chat replaying in an endless loop. The people I'd sacrificed for, supported without question, and loved unconditionally, had been methodically exploiting me for years. Every affectionate gesture, every expression of gratitude, every family memory, all potentially calculated manipulations designed to keep the money flowing. In my beautiful but empty house, I sat alone in the dark, feeling more isolated than I had in my entire life. Sleep proved impossible that night. I sat at my home office desk until dawn, meticulously combing through years of financial records. The spreadsheet I created painted a staggering picture. Over $800,000 transferred to various family members in just 8 years. The monthly allowances alone totaled more than $144,000 annually before the emergencies, business opportunities, and educational expenses. The pattern was undeniable. Each time I established a boundary or questioned an expense, a family crisis would mysteriously materialize. When I hesitated about funding Kyle's motorcycle business, Grandma suddenly needed emergency dental surgery. When I suggested Jessica find stable employment, instead of jumping between passion projects, Mom's roof developed a catastrophic leak during the worst rainstorm in years. The transactions told a story of increasing demands matched by my unfailing compliance. $5,000 became $10,000, became $20,000. The justifications grew flimsier, while the emotional manipulation intensified. I had become an enabler to their lifestyle, a role I never consciously accepted but gradually assumed through each capitulation. As morning light filtered through my windows, memories surfaced from my childhood moments of genuine connection that made this betrayal even more painful. Mom reading to me despite her exhaustion after double shifts. Uncle Frank teaching me to change oil in his garage when I was 10, pride in his eyes when I completed the task perfectly. Family game nights where laughter filled our small apartment, financial struggles temporarily forgotten. Were those moments real, or had I romanticized them? Had my family always seen me as nothing more than a meal ticket, a retirement plan, an investment that finally paid off? Had love ever existed without conditions? I recalled Mom's sacrifices during my early years, the missed meals so I could eat, the second-hand clothes she carefully mended, the parent-teacher conferences she never missed, despite working 60-hour weeks. Those actions reflected genuine love. Something had changed. But when? When success arrived? When giving became easy for me? Or had the potential always existed, dormant until opportunity arose? After a quick shower and change of clothes, I drove to Dr. Bennett's office for an emergency therapy session. I'd been seeing him monthly for work-related stress management, but this crisis demanded immediate attention. They've been systematically lying to manipulate me out of nearly $1 million, I explained, voice hollow as I recounted the group chat discovery. Dr. Bennett listened without interruption, his expression compassionate but controlled. When I finished, he leaned forward slightly. Roosevelt, what you're describing is a profound breach of trust from people who should prioritize your emotional well-being over financial gain. This raises important questions about obligation versus boundaries in family relationships. I always believed supporting them was my duty, I admitted. Successful son takes care of family. Isn't that how it's supposed to work? Generosity and duty aren't the same as enabling destructive patterns, he replied. There's a significant difference between helping family during genuine hardship and funding deception. The messages you saw suggest they view you primarily as a financial resource, rather than a person with feelings and needs of your own. The blunt assessment hurt, but the truth often does. If I cut them off financially, I'll lose them completely, I said, voicing my deepest fear. That possibility exists, Dr. Bennett acknowledged. But consider what you'd actually be losing: relationships built on authentic connection, or transactions disguised as family bonds. The answer might determine whether that loss represents grief to process or chains being broken. The session continued for 2 hours, diving into childhood dynamics, examining patterns of obligation, and discussing healthy versus unhealthy giving. I left with homework to consider what genuine family relationships should look like, and to consult a financial advisor about untangling my complicated financial ties to my relatives. That afternoon, I met with Amelia, my financial advisor, bringing the spreadsheets I'd prepared overnight. Her professional composure briefly faltered as she reviewed the numbers. Roosevelt, this level of financial entanglement is concerning, she said finally. You've established numerous joint accounts, co-signed multiple loans, provided unlimited credit card access, and set up automatic transfers without verification systems. I trusted them, I said simply. I understand, but we need to implement immediate protective measures. She outlined a strategy for systematically separating our finances while fulfilling existing legal obligations. This won't be simple or quick, but it's necessary for your financial security. The plan required further legal consultation. Amelia connected me with Gregory, an attorney specializing in family financial disputes. He reviewed my situation with the clinical detachment I desperately needed. Your family has no legal entitlement to your continued financial support, he confirmed. However, disentanglement requires careful documentation and clear communication to avoid potential claims of promised support. With professional guidance established, I needed personal space to process my emotions and solidify my resolve. I drove 3 hours north to my small cabin on Lake Superior, the one purchase I'd made solely for myself, and significantly, the only property my family had never visited. For 3 days I sat on the deck overlooking the vast water, contemplating identity and worth beyond my provider role. Who was Roosevelt without family obligation? What did I want from relationships beyond transaction? How had I allowed my boundaries to erode so completely? The answers came slowly, between long walks along the shoreline and sleepless nights. I had substituted financial support for emotional connection, believing money could bridge gaps that actually required vulnerability and honest communication. I had enabled harmful patterns, becoming complicit in my own exploitation by refusing to acknowledge reality. My worth wasn't measured by provision, but by character. My identity existed independently from family approval. My success belonged primarily to me. While I gratefully acknowledged early sacrifices made on my behalf, they didn't constitute indefinite debt. On the final morning, watching sunrise over the lake, I made my decision. I would end the financial dependence permanently, offering relationship without resource as the only path forward. If they rejected that option, I would accept the loss and build connections with people who valued me beyond my wallet. The path wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. With newfound clarity, I returned to the city, ready to implement the painful but liberating changes ahead. Strategic disentanglement required precision and professional support. Over the next week, I worked closely with Amelia to develop a comprehensive financial separation plan that would fulfill legal obligations while establishing clear boundaries. We need to approach this systematically, Amelia advised during our planning session. First, we'll document everything to establish a clear record. Then we'll separate accounts, modify recurring payments, and establish new limited support structures where appropriate. Together we cataloged every financial connection. Joint checking accounts with my mother, credit cards where family members were authorized users, automatic monthly transfers, loan co-signatures, and recurring bill payments. The list filled multiple spreadsheets. For your mother's house, which is in her name but has a mortgage you pay, we'll transfer a lump sum to cover 6 months of payments into a dedicated account, Amelia explained. This provides transition time without ongoing entanglement. For other expenses, we determined which constituted legitimate obligations, medical insurance I had contractually committed to provide, versus voluntary support, cell phone bills, car payments, and spending money. Each category required different handling. Next came consultation with Gregory to ensure all actions had solid legal standing. In his downtown office overlooking the city skyline, we reviewed the financial separation strategy. You'll need to provide formal written notice, he advised. Document delivery with signature confirmation. Clearly state the timeline for financial separation and which obligations will continue versus terminate. This creates both a paper trail and reasonable notice. Gregory drafted an official letter detailing the changes, timeline, and reasoning in neutral, factual language. The document explained that while I valued family relationships, I could no longer provide unlimited financial support. It outlined a 30-day transition period before major changes would take effect, giving family members time to make necessary adjustments. Send identical letters to each adult family member, Gregory recommended. This prevents claims that anyone was uninformed about the changes. With the planning complete, I sent the letters via certified mail, requiring signature confirmation. Then I waited, bracing for immediate backlash. Surprisingly, no response came. Days passed without acknowledgement, no calls, no texts, no emails referencing the letters. Family members continued their usual communication, making casual requests for money and acting as though nothing had changed. When Mom asked for extra cash to replace her living room furniture, I gently reminded her about the letter. "What letter?" she asked, genuinely confused. When I explained, she changed the subject quickly, saying she'd look for it later. Similar reactions came from Uncle Frank, and my cousins feigned ignorance or immediate topic changes. They were implementing the most straightforward response to unwelcome information, pretending it didn't exist. The strategy had likely worked with authority figures throughout their lives. Ignore the warning, continue as usual, assume consequences wouldn't materialize. As the 30-day deadline approached with no acknowledgement, I sent follow-up emails reiterating the upcoming changes. These too received no response. Family members continued spending on credit cards I provided, expecting automatic payments to process as usual. They made large purchases, restaurant charges, and online shopping transactions right through the deadline date. When day 31 arrived, I implemented each planned change methodically, closed joint checking and savings accounts, after transferring minimum living expenses to separate accounts in family members' names only, removed authorized user status on all credit cards, canceled automatic transfers for monthly allowances, paid final amounts on family cell phone plans before removing lines from my account, established small emergency fund for my mother with strict disbursement guidelines, documented each action with detailed records. The transition took nearly 8 hours of continuous work with my financial team. By evening, the separation was complete, financial ties severed, except for the minimal safety net established for my mother alone. I'd fulfilled every legal obligation while ending voluntary support that had been exploited. Preparing for the inevitable fallout required emotional fortification. I scheduled additional sessions with Dr. Bennett, warned close friends about potential drama, and arranged a business trip to San Francisco that would provide physical distance during the initial reaction phase. When they realize the changes are real, expect intense emotional responses, Dr. Bennett advised during our preparation session. Anger, accusations, guilt tactics, health emergencies, people who've depended on financial support often cycle through multiple strategies when that support ends. How do I handle it without getting pulled back in? I asked. Limited, consistent responses. No justifications or lengthy explanations, those become ammunition for arguments. Prepare simple statements that you can repeat. I understand you're upset. My decision remains unchanged. I'm open to building a relationship that isn't based on financial support. Then disengage if the conversation becomes manipulative. Before leaving for San Francisco, I set up email filters to categorize family communications, recorded a neutral voicemail message explaining my limited availability, and asked my assistant Sophia to screen calls at the office. These boundaries would provide emotional protection during the adjustment period. As my flight took off the following morning, I felt a complex mixture of anxiety, resolve, and something unexpected relief. For the first time in years, I was establishing healthy boundaries rather than enabling harmful patterns. The financial hemorrhage had stopped. Whatever came next would be difficult but necessary for authentic relationships to have any chance of developing. Landing in San Francisco, I threw myself into productive meetings with potential clients, technology partners, and industry colleagues. The work provided welcome distraction from the approaching storm. Each time I checked my phone between sessions, I expected the bombardment to have begun. For 24 hours, unusual silence continued. Then, exactly 36 hours after implementation, reality hit home for my family. Their credit cards were declined during a shopping spree. Automatic transfers failed to appear in their accounts. Cell phone service displayed payment required messages. The carefully constructed financial safety net had disappeared overnight. The reaction was nuclear. The first indication of trouble came during breakfast at my San Francisco hotel. My phone began vibrating continuously against the table as notification after notification arrived. Within minutes, the screen showed 15 missed calls, 23 text messages, and numerous voicemails, all from family members. I finished my coffee before reviewing any messages, mentally preparing for the onslaught. The texts followed a predictable emotional progression. Mom, 6:13 a.m. Something's wrong with my cards. Call immediately. Mom, 6:15 a.m. Roosevelt, the bank says you removed me. This must be a mistake. Mom, 6:22 a.m. Call me now. This isn't funny. Mom, 6:36 a.m. I can't buy groceries. My card was declined at the store. Everyone was staring. Mom, 6:41 a.m. Why are you doing this to us? Uncle Frank's messages took a more threatening tone. You can't cut family off like this. We raised you. Answer your damn phone before I come find you. This is elder abuse. We can take legal action. After everything we've done for you. This is how you repay family? Aunt Patricia focused on health concerns. Frank's blood pressure is through the roof because of this. If anything happens to him, it's on you. I'm having chest pains from stress. Need to see doctor but can't pay now. Is this what you want? Kyle and Jessica alternated between rage and bargaining. Kyle, you selfish prick. We're family. You can't just cut us off. Jessica, please, Roosevelt. I have bills due tomorrow. I'll lose my apartment. Kyle, always thought you were better than us. Guess now we know for sure. Jessica, I'm sorry if I did something wrong. Please talk to me. I need my allowance. By 9 a.m., I had 37 missed calls. By noon, 55. 11 voicemails ranged from tearful pleas to explicit threats. Email notifications continued, arriving throughout my morning meetings, forcing me to silence my devices completely. The most revealing message came from my mother at 11:23 a.m. Why are you doing this to us? Not, why are you doing this? Or, what's happening? But specifically to us, immediately framing my actions as aggression rather than boundary setting. The phrasing confirmed what the group chat had revealed in their minds. My primary value was financial provision. Anything less constituted active harm. I forwarded the communication records to Gregory, then composed a single response that I sent to each family member individually. I'm not available to discuss this matter by phone currently. As stated in the letter sent 30 days ago, I have ended voluntary financial support. This decision is final. I remain open to building relationships that aren't based on financial dependence. The measured response triggered another explosion of messages, each more desperate or hostile than the last. I maintained silence, focusing on my business obligations in San Francisco, while the initial shockwaves played out from 2,000 miles away. That evening, my neighbor Thomas called to report unusual activity at my house. There are 4 people trying to get in, he explained. Older couple, younger man and woman. The older man is yelling and pounding on your door. Should I call the police? No need, I sighed. They're my family. Please let me handle it. I called Mom's cell phone immediately. What are you doing at my house? I asked when she answered. We need to talk to you, she replied, voice tense. You can't just abandon your family like this. I'm in San Francisco on business, I explained. I'm not home, and I didn't abandon anyone. I simply stopped providing financial support, as I clearly communicated I would do. Please, leave my property now. Not until you turn the money back on, Uncle Frank shouted in the background. If you don't leave immediately, my security system will automatically notify police of trespassing, I stated flatly. A bluff, but a necessary one. I'm happy to schedule a conversation when I return, but this approach isn't appropriate. They eventually departed, but the incident signaled escalation rather than acceptance. Family members began contacting my workplace the following day, overwhelming the reception desk with calls and demands to speak with me. Your uncle called 6 times this morning, Sophia texted. He told me you're having a mental breakdown and they're trying to get you help. Should I be concerned? I'm perfectly fine, I assured her. They're upset about financial changes. Please continue directing them to my email. Marcus, my business partner, called next. Roosevelt, what's going on? Your mother showed up at the office claiming you're in some kind of crisis. She was quite upset. I explained the situation briefly, embarrassed that my personal issues had invaded our professional environment. Marcus proved supportive. Take whatever time you need to handle this. Family stuff gets complicated. Just let me know how I can help. His understanding provided welcome relief amid the chaos. Not everyone in my life viewed me as a walking ATM after all. The ultimate boundary violation occurred on my final day in San Francisco. I was meeting with important potential clients at an upscale restaurant when Uncle Frank and Kyle somehow tracked my location, likely through social media posts by business associates. They entered the restaurant during our lunch meeting, immediately spotting me at the corner table. "There he is," Uncle Frank announced loudly, striding toward our table with Kyle close behind. Heads turned throughout the dining room. I excused myself from my shocked colleagues and intercepted my relatives before they reached the table. "This is completely inappropriate," I said quietly but firmly. "I'm in a business meeting." "You know what's inappropriate?" Uncle Frank's voice boomed, intentionally drawing attention. "Abandoning the family that raised you. Letting your mother worry herself sick. We can discuss this privately later," I insisted, guiding them toward the entrance. "This isn't the place." "When? You won't answer calls. You won't help your own family." Kyle joined in, his voice slurring slightly. I realized he'd been drinking. "Sir, we need to ask you to leave," the restaurant manager approached, addressing Uncle Frank. "You're disturbing our guests." "You don't understand." Frank turned to him. "This man is my nephew. He made millions, and now he's turning his back on family. Would you let someone treat your family this way?" The manager remained professional. "That's not relevant to our establishment's policies. Please exit now, or we'll contact security." "Fine, but everyone should know what he really is," Frank shouted as they were escorted out. "Ungrateful, selfish. We gave him everything, and this is how he repays us." I returned to the table, face burning with embarrassment. "I sincerely apologize for that interruption," I told my potential clients. To my surprise, the lead investor, an older woman named Eleanor, reached over and briefly touched my hand. "No apologies needed. Family business is complicated, especially when money is involved." Now, where were we with the projection figures? Her matter-of-fact response, neither dwelling on the scene nor dismissing it entirely, helped restore my professional composure. The meeting continued successfully despite the interruption. Later that evening, I received a text from one of the junior associates who had attended. For what it's worth, my family pulled similar stunts when I set boundaries. "Hardest thing I ever did, but necessary. Hang in there." The simple message from a virtual stranger provided unexpected comfort. Perhaps my situation wasn't as unique as it felt. Others had navigated these painful waters before me. As I packed for my return flight the next morning, I knew the real confrontation still awaited me back home. The distance had provided necessary space for initial reactions to play out, but true resolution, whatever form that might take, required direct communication. I was ready now, strengthened by distance and perspective. The financial boundaries would remain firm. The question was whether any genuine relationship could exist within those new parameters. Returning to Minnesota after 2 weeks away, I drove directly from the airport to my house, exhausted from travel but steeled for whatever awaited me. Something seemed wrong as I approached the front door, stood slightly ajar. Heart pounding, I cautiously entered my own home. The interior looked like a crime scene. Cabinet doors hung open. Drawers had been emptied onto floors. Electronics were missing: television, sound system, computer monitors. Art had disappeared from walls, leaving ghostly rectangles on the paint. In my bedroom, the closet stood bare except for a few hangers. The safe in my office remained locked, but showed scratches around the keypad. Shock gave way to cold anger as I activated the security system app on my phone. The cameras I'd installed after previous concerns had captured everything: Uncle Frank, Aunt Patricia, Kyle, and Jessica entering using Mom's emergency key. The footage showed them methodically emptying my house of valuables, loading them into 2 SUVs. Their conversation was clearly recorded. "He owes us this much at least," Uncle Frank declared, directing the others. "After cutting us off completely, we're just taking what should have been ours anyway." "Take the expensive stuff first," Kyle instructed Jessica, pointing out items I'd purchased during more prosperous times. "We can sell it online." "Should we be doing this?" Mom asked once, standing in the doorway without participating directly. "He abandoned his family," Aunt Patricia responded. "Left us without warning. No way to pay bills. He deserves this." Mom nodded slowly, then turned away while the others continued. I downloaded the footage, then called Officer Taylor at the local police department. She arrived within 30 minutes to document the break-in and theft. "Do you know who did this?" she asked, surveying the damage. "Yes," I answered, showing her the security footage. "My family members." Her expression shifted from professional concern to complicated understanding. "Family situations can be the most difficult," she noted. "Do you want to press charges?" The question hung heavy in the air. Despite everything, criminal charges against my own mother, uncle, aunt, and cousins felt like crossing a final line. Not yet, I decided, but I need this documented officially, and I want to pursue recovery of my property. Officer Taylor completed a comprehensive report, including detailed inventory of missing items and their approximate value, nearly $60,000 worth. "This documentation supports civil recovery regardless of criminal charges," she explained. "Consider consulting your attorney about a demand letter for return of property." After she left, I spent hours cleaning up the physical chaos while navigating emotional turbulence. The invasion of my home represented more than theft. It was the ultimate betrayal of trust, a violent rejection of my boundaries, and clear evidence that my family viewed my possessions as communal property they were entitled to take. Gregory was appropriately outraged when I called him the next morning. "This crosses every line, legal, ethical, and familial," he stated. "We have multiple options for response, from criminal charges to civil action. What outcome are you seeking?" "Resolution," I answered after consideration. "Return of my property if possible, but more importantly, clarity about where we stand going forward. I need to know if any relationship can be salvaged or if complete separation is necessary." We developed a two-pronged approach: formal demand letter for return of property within 48 hours and request for mediated meeting at a neutral location. The letter was delivered to each family member by courier that afternoon. Response came within hours, not compliance, but angry phone calls. I declined to engage individually, instead reiterating the request for mediated meeting. Eventually, they agreed to meet at a local diner 2 days later, with Diana, a professional mediator Gregory recommended, present to facilitate. The morning of the meeting, I arrived early to center myself before the confrontation. Diana reviewed our approach. "My role is to maintain productive communication and prevent escalation," she explained. "I'll intervene if conversations become unproductive or hostile. Remember your objectives: property return and relationship clarity." When my family arrived, the atmosphere immediately tensed. Mom looked smaller somehow, diminished by circumstances. Uncle Frank projected aggressive confidence despite the situation. Aunt Patricia dabbed theatrical tears while Kyle and Jessica projected sullen resentment. Diana established ground rules for the discussion: no interrupting, no personal attacks, focus on issues rather than emotions. Then she invited me to speak first. "I've asked for this meeting for 2 reasons," I began, keeping my voice steady. "First, to address the theft of my property and arrange its return. Second, to clarify where our relationships stand moving forward." "Theft," Uncle Frank interrupted immediately. "We just took what we deserved after you cut us off without warning. You received written notice 30 days before any financial changes." I responded calmly. "The letter detailed exactly what would happen and when. You chose to ignore that notice completely." "What letter?" Kyle asked, continuing the pretense of ignorance despite evidence to the contrary. I removed copies of the certified mail receipts bearing their signatures, placing them on the table. "These letters, which you all received and signed for." Momentary silence fell as they absorbed the evidence contradicting their narrative. "You still abandoned your family," Mom said quietly. "After everything we did for you." "I'd like to address exactly what everything means," I replied, retrieving my phone. "I think we need complete honesty about our family dynamics." I played selected clips from the group chat screenshots I'd taken, the explicit plans to manipulate me, the jokes at my expense, the strategies for extracting maximum money. Their faces registered shock as their private conversations became public within our small group. "You went through my phone?" Mom gasped, finding offense in my actions rather than addressing their content. "I saw messages accidentally while fixing your phone," I clarified. "But that's not the point. The point is that you've been systematically lying to me for years to obtain money under false pretenses. The evidence was irrefutable. Faced with their own words, they shifted strategies. "You're wealthy," Aunt Patricia argued. "You wouldn't even notice that money. We're family, we're supposed to share." "I've shared generously," I countered. "Over $800,000 in 8 years. The issue isn't sharing, it's dishonesty and manipulation. Creating fake emergencies, pretending Grandma needed medical treatments she never received, claiming to start businesses that never existed. You owe us for raising you," Uncle Frank insisted, voice rising, "for everything we sacrificed." "Mom made real sacrifices when I was young," I acknowledged. "I've more than repaid those through years of support. But obligation isn't infinite, and it doesn't justify lies." Diana intervened as emotions escalated. "Let's refocus on the concrete issues. Roosevelt has requested return of his property taken from his home. How do you plan to address that?" Defensive justifications followed. They'd already sold some items. Others were being stored at their homes. Some had been given to friends. Kyle stormed out when pressed for specific information. Jessica eventually admitted to selling my watches and electronics online, showing a fleeting moment of remorse. "I can return some stuff," she offered quietly. "I still have your winter clothes and those books from your office." It was the only concession offered during 3 tense hours. As the meeting continued, it became increasingly clear that there was no common ground for reconciliation. They viewed my financial support as obligation rather than generosity. They felt entitled to take whatever I possessed. Most critically, they showed no recognition that their actions had damaged trust beyond repair. The breaking point came when Uncle Frank issued his ultimatum. "It's simple. Either you support your family financially like you should, or you're no longer part of this family. That's your choice." The statement crystallized everything. In their view, my worth was measured solely by financial provision. Family was conditional upon payment. Love and acceptance had price tags attached. "That's not a family relationship," I replied after a long moment. "That's a transaction, and it's not one I'm willing to continue." "So you're choosing money over family," Mom said, tears flowing. "I never thought you'd abandon us like your father did." The comparison stung but clarified my path forward. Unlike my father, I hadn't disappeared without explanation. I'd communicated clearly, maintained willingness for relationship without financial dependence, and faced the situation directly, rather than running from it. The parallel was false and manipulative, one final attempt to control through guilt. "I'm choosing self-respect and honesty," I corrected gently. "I remain open to relationship based on mutual respect, rather than financial obligation. If that's not acceptable to you, then yes, we need to part ways." The meeting ended without resolution on property return or relationship repair. My family departed with various expressions of anger, hurt, and resentment. Mom's tears as she walked away nearly broke my resolve, but I remembered the group chat messages in her own words. "He owes us everything," and maintained my boundary. Driving home alone, I experienced the complex emotional mixture that Dr. Bennett had prepared me for: grief, for the family relationships I'd hoped for, relief at finally breaking unhealthy patterns, fear of the unknown future, and strange peace knowing I'd chosen integrity over enabling harmful dynamics. That evening, my phone rang with an unfamiliar local number. I answered cautiously. "Roosevelt? It's Grandma." My grandmother's voice brought unexpected tears. We'd spoken infrequently over recent years, primarily when family members put her on the phone to describe fabricated medical conditions. "Grandma, are you okay?" I asked. "I'm fine, dear. Better than fine, actually. But I just heard what's happened with the family, and I wanted to check on you." Frank came by very upset, telling quite a story about you cutting everyone off without reason. Her direct approach was refreshing after months of manipulation from others. I explained the situation truthfully, including the fabricated medical emergencies involving her. "Those rascals," she said, sounding more disappointed than surprised. "Using an old woman to get money. I wondered why they kept asking me to call you," sounding pitiful. She paused. "You did the right thing, Roosevelt. Setting boundaries isn't wrong, even with family, especially with family sometimes." Her understanding provided unexpected validation. We talked for nearly an hour, our first real conversation in years. I promised to visit soon, directly rather than through other family members. After our call, I composed a careful letter to extended family members who weren't directly involved, explaining my decision to end financial support and the circumstances behind it. The letter didn't seek to vilify anyone but presented facts necessary for understanding the estrangement that would likely become family discussion. Responses trickled in over subsequent days, some supportive, others judgmental, many simply acknowledging receipt without taking sides. The family dynamic had been permanently altered, but at least the narrative wouldn't be controlled exclusively by those who had exploited me. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. The path forward remained uncertain, relationships damaged perhaps beyond repair, but I had chosen truth over enabling, self-respect over exploitation. Whatever came next would be built on more solid foundation than what had come before. 6 months passed like gentle waves washing away footprints on shoreline. The immediate storm of family crisis gradually receded, replaced by quieter, more meaningful reconstruction of my life, without the constant drain of toxic relationships and financial exploitation. The initial weeks proved most difficult. Habits of checking on family members, responding to their needs, and measuring my worth through their approval were deeply ingrained. I'd reach for my phone to send Mom her weekly check-in text, then remember our estrangement. I'd see something Kyle would enjoy, and instinctively think about buying it for him, then recall the security footage of him carrying my possessions from my home. Dr. Bennett helped navigate these moments, normalizing grief while reinforcing boundaries. You're mourning relationships as you wished they were, not as they actually existed, he explained during one particularly difficult session. The family you're missing is partly idealized, the one that would have appreciated your generosity and reciprocated with genuine care rather than escalating demands. Loneliness presented the greatest challenge. Despite successful career and financial security, my social connections had atrophied while family obligations consumed my energy. Weekends stretched empty before me, without obligatory Sunday dinners or crisis management calls from relatives. The turning point came unexpectedly when I volunteered at a local technology education program for underprivileged youth. Teaching coding basics to enthusiastic teenagers reconnected me with my own early passion for technology while creating meaningful community engagement. Their genuine excitement when mastering concepts provided satisfaction, unrelated to financial provision. Through the program, I met fellow volunteer instructors who shared interests beyond my family drama. Weekend hikes with William, chess matches with Dominic, and coffee discussions with Liam gradually filled social calendar gaps. These friendships developed naturally without financial component. No one asked for anything beyond mutual respect and enjoyment of shared activities. Most significantly, I met Emma, a linguistics professor, volunteering to teach technical writing alongside our programming classes. Her sharp intellect and genuine curiosity about people rather than possessions proved refreshing. When I eventually shared my family situation during our 5th dinner together, her response struck me with its wisdom. "What a profound theft," she observed. "Not just of your money, but of the opportunity for genuine connection. They robbed themselves of knowing who you really are beyond your wallet." Our relationship developed slowly, built on conversation and common values, rather than transaction or obligation. For the first time, I experienced partnership where both people contributed equally, if differently. The contrast with family dynamics highlighted how unhealthy those relationships had been. Professional success continued, but with improved balance. I established firm work boundaries, no more 80-hour weeks or constant availability. Personal time became sacred, protected for activities that nurtured rather than drained me. The company thrived despite, or perhaps because of these limitations. Financial resources previously consumed by family demands found more meaningful deployment. I established a structured charitable foundation, providing technology education scholarships for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Unlike my previous scattered giving to family, this philanthropy included accountability measures and clear objectives. The mentorship program I developed for young entrepreneurs became particularly meaningful. Working with talented individuals who lacked resources but possessed drive reminded me of my early career struggles. Unlike family members, these mentees showed genuine appreciation through effort and commitment rather than entitlement and demands. Healing with family progressed unevenly. Most relationships remained severed by mutual choice. Uncle Frank, Aunt Patricia, Kyle, and Jessica maintained that I had betrayed family obligation. They made no attempts to return stolen property or acknowledge manipulation, instead constructing narrative painting themselves as victims of my success and selfishness. Only my mother eventually reached out, 6 months after our confrontation. Her text message arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. "I miss my son, not his money, just him." Those simple words opened possibility for cautious reconnection. Our first meeting coffee at neutral location proved awkward but significant. We avoided financial discussions entirely, instead sharing limited personal updates and memories from my early childhood before money complicated everything. "I lost my way," she admitted during our third carefully bounded meeting. "Somewhere between struggling to provide basics and accepting your generosity, I started expecting rather than appreciating. Then expecting became demanding, and demanding became manipulating." She paused, eyes downcast. "I'm deeply ashamed of who I became." Her acknowledgement, while not erasing years of manipulation, created foundation for potential healing. We established clear parameters for rebuilding relationship: regular but limited contact, no financial component whatsoever, immediate consequences for boundary violations. Progress remained fragile, but genuine. The journey taught profound lessons I continuously integrated into my evolving perspective. Genuine relationships cannot be purchased. Money often complicates connections rather than strengthening them. True bonds form through mutual respect, reciprocal care, and shared values, not financial transaction. Enabling hurts both parties. By continually fulfilling escalating demands, I'd prevented family members from developing self-sufficiency while sacrificing my own well-being. Setting boundaries ultimately offered everyone opportunity for healthier development. Worth exists independently from provider role. My value as human being was never determined by financial provision. The people who truly cared about me, Emma, friends, mentees, grandmother, valued my character, insights, and presence rather than my wallet. Generosity requires boundaries to remain healthy. Unlimited giving without accountability creates entitlement rather than gratitude. Structured philanthropy with clear parameters produces more positive outcomes for both giver and recipient than boundless family subsidies. Chosen family sometimes provides healthier connection than blood relations. The supportive community I built through shared interests and values offered genuine connection that biological family had ultimately failed to provide. Blood ties create opportunity for relationship, but don't guarantee its health. Family bonds require mutual respect and reciprocity to thrive. When these elements consistently remain absent despite communication and boundary setting, separation sometimes represents healthiest choice. Today, my life bears little resemblance to the financially entangled, emotionally manipulated existence I once accepted as normal. I maintain minimal, carefully bounded contact with my mother as she continues her journey toward healthier relationship patterns. I enjoy deepening connection with Emma, meaningful friendships, rewarding mentorship work, and balanced professional success. The financial drain has ended, but more importantly, the emotional hemorrhage has stopped. I no longer measure my worth through others' approval or calculate my value based on provision. The liberation extends beyond bank accounts to fundamental self-perception and life satisfaction. If you're caught in similar dynamics, financially supporting family members who demonstrate entitlement rather than appreciation, know that establishing boundaries isn't selfish but necessary for everyone's well-being. You deserve relationships based on genuine connection rather than transaction. The path toward healthier dynamics may prove painful, but the destination offers authentic relationships that nourish rather than deplete you. Have you experienced family members taking financial advantage? What boundaries have you established in your own relationships? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content exploring complex family dynamics. Remember, your worth is never determined by what you provide, only by who you truly are.